Look around almost any room, and you'll find someone who seems to know everyone. Hundreds of contacts, a full calendar, 50 birthday messages. And then, there's a quieter kind of person. The one with 2, maybe 3 real friends, and a phone that mostly stays silent. And here's what most people get completely wrong about them. They assume that person is lonely, struggling, missing something. But psychologists who study connection would tell you the opposite might be true. Because having very few friends isn't always a social failure. Sometimes it's the sign of a mind that stopped playing a game everyone else is still exhausting themselves trying to win. Stick with me, because by the end of this you might see your own small circle completely differently. Or finally understand someone in your life who's always kept theirs small. Not having many friends doesn't mean you're unlikable. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It might mean you understand something about people that took most of the world far too long to learn. And if you've been here before, this is going to feel familiar, because it's the same quiet wiring we've been tracing this whole time. The people who don't chase money refuse to outsource their worth to a bigger number. The people who don't chase relationships refuse to outsource it to another person. And the people who don't collect friends, they refuse to outsource it to a crowd. Same instinct, pointed at a different target. So today, we do what we always do here. Take something people quietly judge and look at the real psychology underneath. There are 3 kinds of people who end up with very few friends. Then, we'll get into the mechanism nobody talks about, why a big social circle is so often a performance. And finally, the one thing all of them understand about connection. Let's get into it. The first group didn't always have a small circle. Some of them were once the popular one, the big group chat, the packed weekends, the wide net of people they called friends. And then, slowly, something started to bother them. They noticed that most of those friendships only ran in one direction, that the people who showed up when it was fun vanished the moment it wasn't. That we should hang out soon was a thing people said, not a thing they meant. There's a real cost to keeping all those connections alive, a kind of social maintenance tax, and every relationship, no matter how shallow, quietly charges you for it. Your time, your energy, your attention, all finite. And one day, this group did the math. They looked at a calendar full of people and realized that being surrounded wasn't the same as being known. So they started pruning, not out of bitterness, out of clarity. Picture a man who used to say yes to everything, whose weekends were a blur of half friends and small talk, and who still, somehow, drove home most nights feeling strangely empty. One year, he just stopped. He let the shallow ones fade. And what surprised him wasn't the loneliness he'd braced for. It was the relief. There's actually research behind that shift. As people gain perspective, through age, through loss, through simply paying attention, they tend to deliberately narrow their social world toward fewer, deeper relationships. Psychologists call it socioemotional selectivity, and here's the part that surprises people. It's linked not to decline, but to emotional maturity. This first group didn't lose their friends. They chose which ones were real. But the second group never had a big circle to prune. For them, the small circle was never a decision. It's just how their mind is wired. This group simply cannot do surface level. You know the interaction, the polite hovering near the snack table, the so, what do you do, the weather, the weekend plans. For most people, that's just the harmless small change of social life. For this group, it's genuinely draining, not because they're rude or antisocial, but because their minds are built for depth. And small talk is the one thing depth can't survive on. And there's a real reason for it. People vary enormously in how much social stimulation they can comfortably take, and the more introverted mind reaches its limit faster. A room full of light acquaintances isn't nourishing to them. It's a slow drain on a battery that only recharges alone. So they don't spread themselves across 20 people. They pour everything into 2 or 3. And what those 2 or 3 get is rare. Someone who actually remembers what you said last time, who asks the real question, not the reflexive one, Who would rather sit in comfortable silence with you than make noise with a stranger? This group would tell you, without a hint of apology, that they take one friend who knows their whole story over 100 who know their highlight reel. And here's what people miss about them. Their small circle isn't a sign that nobody wants them. It's a sign that they refuse to water down their attention until it means nothing. Depth is expensive. They've simply decided to spend it carefully. And then there's the third group, the ones who aren't reacting to fake friends and aren't just built for depth, the ones who solved the things sitting underneath all of it. This group has very few friends for the most disarming reason of all. They are genuinely, deeply okay on their own. And I want to be careful here, because our culture treats he's a bit of a loner almost like a diagnosis, as if the natural, healthy state of a human is to be perpetually surrounded, and anything less is a problem to be fixed. But there's a distinction psychologists draw that changes this entire conversation: the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is a painful gap. You want more connection than you have. Solitude is something else entirely. It's chosen. It's full. It's the deep, restorative comfort of your own company. And this third group has an unusual amount of it. They can spend a Saturday completely alone and feel not one drop of that hollow ache, because they were never using other people to escape themselves. This is where the whole series quietly connects. Remember self-determination theory? That real well-being comes from autonomy, competence, and connection you actually choose? This group built a self that doesn't need a crowd to confirm it exists. Their sense of being okay comes from inside. So friendship, for them, isn't a lifeline. It's a luxury. Something they add to a life that was already complete, not something they need to feel real. And that changes everything about how they befriend people. They're not collecting anyone. They're not keeping a head count. They have a few people they genuinely love. And past that, they simply feel no lack. There's a quiet, almost unsettling confidence in the person who could lose most of their social circle and still, fundamentally, be fine. Which brings us to the thing underneath all three of these groups, the part almost nobody says out loud. Here's the reframe that ties this whole thing together. For a huge number of people, a large social circle isn't really about connection at all. It's about proof. Think about it. We live in a world that quietly keeps score. Followers, contacts, the size of the party, how many people remembered your birthday. And somewhere along the way, a big circle stopped being a source of closeness and started being evidence. Evidence that you're likable. Wanted? Okay. And that is the exact trap the people with few friends stepped out of. Because here's the uncomfortable truth about popularity. Most of it is the maintenance of an image, not the depth of a bond. There's a well-known idea in psychology, sometimes called Dunbar's number, which suggests our brains can only truly sustain a limited number of meaningful relationships, a small handful of close ones, and a wider layer of casual acquaintances beyond that. Sit with that, because it means something freeing. The person with 40 friends does not actually have 40 friendships. Neurologically, they can't. What they usually have is the same 2 or 3 genuine bonds everyone has room for, plus 37 relationships that are really just well-maintained acquaintances. So the person with few friends isn't missing the real thing. They've just quietly let go of the acquaintance layer that was never feeding them anyway. And there's a second, deeper cost the big circle hides. The more people you keep close, the more versions of yourself you have to maintain. A slightly different you for this group, a filtered you for that one. Many friendships, quietly, means many performances. But the person with 2 or 3 real friends gets to be one consistent human being. The same self in every room. And do you know how rare, how genuinely restful it is to never have to perform? That's what this whole thing has been about. The people with few friends stopped chasing the crowd for the very same reason the others stopped chasing money and love. They realized they were trying to fill from the outside something that can only ever be filled from within. 100 acquaintances will never convince a person they're worthy, if they don't already believe it. And two real friends were never meant to carry that job. Connection was never supposed to be proof. It was just supposed to be connection. Now, I have to be honest about the other side of this, because it matters. Having few friends can be a sign of health. It can also be a wall. There's a real difference between my circle is small because I choose depth, and I'm at peace, and I've isolated myself because reaching out feels too risky, and I call it independence so it hurts a little less. The first is solitude. The second is loneliness in disguise. If your small circle feels full, beautiful, but if it quietly aches, if you tell yourself you don't need anyone precisely so you don't have to feel that you'd actually like someone, that's worth looking at, honestly and gently. This was never about romanticizing isolation or pretending humans don't need each other. We do. It's about the difference between a circle that's small because it's deep and one that's small because it's walled. Because here's what all three of these people quietly understand. Connection was never a numbers game. The person who needs a big audience to feel like they matter can never actually have enough. There's always a bigger room, a fuller party, someone more popular. But the person who has 2 or 3 people who know the real, unperform them already holds the only thing the crowd was ever a substitute for. So if you've ever felt a little out of place because your circle is small, because you'd genuinely rather have a few real people than a room full of almost friends, you might not be antisocial, or unlikable, or behind. You might have figured out, earlier than most, that being surrounded and being known are 2 completely different things, and that a handful of people who truly see you was never the consolation prize. It was always the whole point. So, which one are you? The one who pruned the fake ones? The one built for depth? Or the one who's genuinely whole on their own? Tell me in the comments. The few of you who leave them, I read every single one. And if this landed somewhere real, you'll want the next one. The psychology of people who don't open up easily. Because the same thing that keeps their circle small is quietly at work there too, and it's more tender than it looks. Subscribe, and I'll see you in that one. You're in good company here.